You gave up a TV job to start a podcast in your basement. If that doesn't scream midlife crisis, I don't know what does.
It was Championship Sunday here in Indianapolis. What's the mindset then coming in as a defending champion?
I want to win. No, I want to win.
The young lady over my shoulder, Caitlin Clark.
Not the best looking guy. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say, Matt Randazzo was really good looking.
What has this last month, 2 months, 3 months been like for you? It's an important fan base for the Fighting Illini, isn't it?
It is.
He turned 69 years young last week. You look good, Coach.
Oh, try it. Thank you.
Welcome to Off the Air with Matt Randazzo here on a Friday in the Quad Cities. Friday the 13th. Friday, February 13th. Thank you guys for joining us. It is the last day of the week. I'm really excited about the weekend. Fellas out there, Valentine's Day is tomorrow. Let this be your public service announcement that Valentine's Day is tomorrow. Don't forget that lovely lady in your life tomorrow. But today is February 13th, Friday the 13th, a great show to get to. Really excited about how we're going to end the week. So thank you guys for ending your work week with us. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for that. We appreciate that. Getting close to 1,500 subscribers. So if you're watching us live on YouTube, thank you. If you have subscribed, thank you. If you haven't subscribed, please do so ASAP. It helps us out a bunch. And make sure you're active with the chat as well. We always enjoy chatting throughout the show when available. I'm producing and engineering and hosting this little thing of ours. But when I get the chance, I'm always headed to the chat and chatting with you guys. And if you got questions for guests, all those kind of things, let us know on the YouTube chat as well. We're live on X. X has been very, very good to us. Nearly 3,000 people watched the show via X yesterday. So we thank you for that. We appreciate that. Keep doing those kind of things. Also, stay active and interactive on X as well. We have a great poll question up on X right now. We'll talk about already getting responses to it already. So we'll get to that in just a second. You can also check out the podcast or the show anywhere you get your podcasts, your streaming app, all of those kind of things. Wherever you get or whatever podcasting platform you use, put in Off the Air with Matt Randazzo and check out the show. Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Podbean, wherever you go, check it out. Listen to it. You don't have to look at me. That's the best part of the whole thing. So make sure you're listening to the show as well. Working out tonight, heading out to the high school basketball games, whatever you're going to do, put it on, take a listen. We always appreciate that. And welcome to our viewers in Central Iowa. We are on the WHO streaming app each and every weeknight at 7 p.m. Love doing it. Love the response we got from you guys in Central Iowa as well. So we appreciate that and welcome to you guys as well. This week has been a really fun week. On Monday, Tyler Tashman, Pat Anger, John Marks all joined us on Monday. Tuesday, we had Kyle Huseman talking not just Iowa women's basketball, but the Iowa baseball as well. So if you're thinking, man, Tuesday was a game ago for Iowa women, I don't need to go listen. Great preview of the baseball season from Kyle. So go back to Tuesday's episode if you're looking for that. Ked Prince was on. We had him all fired up about officiating. And Lexi DeMont from Galesburg basketball. Silver Streaks lost their fourth game of the season last night. They're 25-4, ranked number 2. And when you're in Galesburg, it was Evan Massey for 46 years and for very good reason at a very high level. Lexi taking over year 2, doing a fantastic job. So check out that interview. It was a lot of fun. On Wednesday, Jake Brend, Julian Vandervelde. We're going to begin a new food type of segment with Julian coming up in the near future. So check that out and give us your input on where we should head. And then Todd Borson, legendary head coach in the state of Iowa, has Mediapolis 21-0 on the season, has 3 state titles, 2 with Preston, 1 with Assumption, doing great things with Mediapolis. We talked with him on a Wednesday. Yesterday's show, Tom Kakert was here. Nesto Hoops. If you missed Aaron Britton and Nesto Hoops, go check that out. The seeds are out for the boys in Illinois. So we talked to him before they came out, but a lot of great information on his thoughts on how our local teams might fare this postseason. Really good stuff. One of the best in the business. Check out Nesto Hoops and check out yesterday's show for that. And the Central DeWitt girls, a trio of captains, were on the show. Really fun to have them on yesterday. Check out that segment as well. Today's show, off the air, turns into the wild world of sports. My mentor, my good friend Dan Buriich, is going to join us in just a few moments to talk about everything. I wanted to get his thoughts on Roger Craig. I want to get his thoughts on Jim Albracht and remembering him. Also want to get his thoughts on the Bears. I know there's going to be a ton of stories along the way. So we're going to spend probably the next hour with Dan Buriich, and kind of that's how I grew up. I grew up listening to K-Jock and Dan on the radio, and then eventually on TV and all those kind of things. Dan's doing great. North Carolina, lovely wife, 2 kids, both kids in college. Empty nesting and all those kind of things. So we'll catch up with Dan coming up here in just a little bit and really kind of focus on that today. We'll talk some college basketball later in hour number 2, get you set for the weekend as well. A whole bunch of stuff to get to on today's show. Quickly, a little news and notes. No big games-wise college coming up this weekend. High school-wise, we mentioned Galesburg losing last night. The girls, Rock Island, Henry Hall. I give Henry Hall a lot of trouble on this show, and he catches strays for no other reason than I love to give him a hard time. But Henry Hall and the Rock Island girls beating Galesburg last night in a great girls basketball game. There are several teams in the Western Big Six that can make some noise in the postseason. Galesburg, Sterling, Quincy's really, really good. Rock Island, Alleman down a class will make some noise as well. So really intrigued to see how the postseason develops for the ladies, not just in Illinois, but in Iowa as well. So congrats to Henry Hall and the Rocks, and also Sterling yesterday beating Moline, getting a great performance, and knocking off a really good Moline team. And Moline's a team I didn't mention as well. Really good with Adeline Voss and company. So intrigued by next week. The postseason starting for the girls next week. Really intrigued to see how things set up on both sides of the river. And we talked with Mediapolis's Todd Borison this week, and we talked with the Central DeWitt girls. We talked with Ava Putman, Emma Putman, and Kinley Burt as well. So it's that fun time of year when February Frenzy, March Madness, all that kind of good stuff. I do want to mention Caden Fagan is moving from Illinois to tight end. And I get it. Brett Bielema talked with the media yesterday, kind of talked about that, new defensive coordinator, a bunch of other stuff. That kind of caught my eye because there's a Rock Island standout that had a really good stretch this season catching the football and then didn't play much at the end of the year. He's now in Arizona. Cole Rusk is going to do great out there, and he's excited about that opportunity. But the knock on him was that he didn't block enough. I don't think it's true, but that would probably been the knock. And Illinois wanted to put their best blockers out in the field. I hope Caden Fagan can block. That's all I think he's going to be a great wide receiver, but I hope he can block because that was such a big deal last year that a really talented tight end is now out in Arizona. That I hope it's the same this year as well. So we'll talk more Illinois football next week. I'm going to try to track down Brett Bielema was on the show last spring with us. So was Kirk Ferentz. Going to try to line up those interviews for the upcoming months. Probably won't be till March or April, probably April before we get to do those kind of things. But we'll catch up with Coach Bielema real soon when it comes to those kind of things as well. Poll question of the day. And I really like this one. Already getting some poll responses. It is a really fun week of college basketball. Great weekend ahead. I'm looking and reading and talking at the same time, which can be dangerous. So the poll question today, which result is least likely to happen this weekend? Okay, least likely. Hawks beat Purdue. Cyclones beat Kansas. Both of them are at home. Illinois beats the Hoosiers. They're at home as well. Or all three will happen. So I think all three will happen. I really do. I like Iowa State and the spot. I think Kansas, coming off that emotional victory over number one, now goes on the road to a hostile environment. You got Iowa State losing to TCU, coming back home, starting a very important stretch. The Hilton Coliseum will be rocking. I really like Iowa State. I think they might be a 6-point favorite in that game. I do like the Cyclones. I like Illinois. They're not losing 3 straight. I can't see. I think they're a Final Four-ish type of team, Elite Eight-ish type of team. I put ish on the end of everything so I don't get, cornered with that prediction. But I think they win, and I do think Iowa can win. I really do. I mean, Purdue's really good. I'm worried about the inside. I'm worried about the rebounding. Obviously, Purdue's super long. They always have. Somebody asked during the show yesterday, probably on the chat, how does Purdue continue to get all these 7-footers? And well, when you have success with one, others tend to follow. That's the hope when it comes to point guards. You have success at Iowa with Bennett Sturts, and Ben McCollum's had success with several point guards, not just Ben McCollum. You hope others come. So I think all three happen. If I had to vote on the poll online, I would say all three happen. I think Carver's going to be electric. I think it's just as big of a game. It's big for the standings and Quad 1 and Ken Pom and Drink Wheezy and all that kind of stuff. But it's also important when it comes to getting a full house at Carver Hawkeye and getting a victory, a signature win to get them to come back and back and back, because Nebraska, Michigan, Ohio State all still come to Carver Hawkeye Arena this year. So there's some big games down the stretch, and 15-5, very important if Iowa is going to pick up 1, 2, 3, how many signature victories they can get. So should be a fantastic weekend of college basketball. We'll talk all about it coming up next week. A fun time of year when it comes to hoops, college and high school basketball alike. So we're going to take one quick, like 30-second break. And then after the break, Dan Buriich will join us. The off the air turns into the wild world of sports. Roger Craig talk, Jim Albracht talk, a bunch more. You're watching OTA. It's Friday the 13th in the Quad Cities. We'll be right back.
Give me the keys. Learning to drive can be stressful for both the student and, yes, the parent as well. Relax. There's an easy way to avoid the stress. Skiles Driving School in East Moline has been helping new drivers hit the road with confidence for over 20 years. Whether you're a teen earning your first license or an adult looking for behind-the-wheel training, we've got you covered. Their certified instructors are patient, experienced, and use modern vehicles equipped for safety and comfort. From classroom instruction to real-world driving, we make learning safe, affordable, and even fun. Call 309-278-0098 or visit skylesdriving.com. Skiles Driving School. Get in, buckle up, drive your future forward.
Welcome back to Off the Air with Matt Randazzo here on a Friday in the Quad Cities. Of course, it's been an eventful time in the Quad Cities. Some big news coming of late, especially about a week ago today. We found out that Roger Craig finally heading to the Hall of Fame. We had Craig DeVries on last week. He had great perspective, calling Roger during Mallard's games and all those kind of things. John Marks, of course, had a perspective, always has an opinion on Monday. But I figured I want to go to the guy that probably talked to me the most about Roger Craig back in those days in the newsroom at WQID. So Dan Buriich joins us right now on Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. Dan, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. How are you, my friend?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. We hadn't talked in a while. We started off when you did this, and I was very happy for you. We were doing like a weekly thing, and then we both got busy. Your show took off. You forgot about me. I'm just kidding. You had Marks in. Well, there's a,
it's gone to hell. Like, look I got marks on too much. It's gone to, no, what it was is that it was getting too popular. You were once again overshadowing me. So I had to get rid of you.
Right.
People wanted Burich every day. Off the air with Dan Buriich is what people wanted. So I had to talk to you about Roger Craig. And you went to school with Artez. You've known the Craigs for a long time at St. Ambrose. I guess first off, your thoughts of finally hearing the news.
I'm very happy because he's a super nice guy, as humble as of a superstar that you can meet, which was neat. And you were asking me off the air, was I the same age as Artez? And I said, let me just tell you on air. So I'm a freshman. We'll just do some quick stories. I'm a freshman. I don't know who Roger Craig is. I'm not from Davenport. All the guys playing with me, guys from Assumption, Larry Madrigal, Tom Zach, who were some seniors, had played against them. Pat Kilfoy's one you might know. And the legend Roger Craig with they lost in his senior year where he had 44 of the 45 plays ahead. He carried the ball for like 280 yards or something, 5 touchdowns, and they lost some crazy game. And, so I'm starting to hear about this stuff. And Artez probably talked about it the least. But Artez and I were freshmen together. It was John Furlong's first year at St. Ambrose. Of our freshman recruits, along with the great late Bob Jervitz, it was Jay Fitzgerald, who's a coach at Bettendorf, the baseball coach. We were all running backs together, Al Tudine from Bettendorf. And Artez was from Central, and there were some other guys that I can mention, but I don't need to. And Artez, it was just kind of blasé about it. 2 things I remember: Artez were driving on the bad small St. Ambrose, and he says, Artez, somebody goes, hey, who's Nebraska playing? He goes, Penn State, they're going to lose today. And I'm like, your brother played grass. You ever been to Lincoln, Dan? No. It's curved, and he had the whole rundown. Artez was honest about it. He goes, yeah. And I said, Artez, they scored 77 points last week, 73, and that's not a lie. They lit somebody up. Yeah, they're going to lose at Penn State on the road, and they did. So Artez was never like, he loves his brother, obviously. He's happy for him and knew he's great, but it was never about like, I'm Roger's brother and Roger's great. So then later on, and Roger would come and work out at Lee Loman the next year when it first opened. That's how old I am, right? Yeah. We're playing at John O'Donnell. There's no Lee Loman, which is now an old arena, 40 years old, I guess. They built it that second year, going into my sophomore year. And hey, Artie, who's looking at Roger? Oh, 49ers. 49ers? Yeah, they like his hands. Bill Walsh likes his hands. And I look at Artez and I said, hands? He didn't catch any passes at Nebraska. They never threw. And he said, they threw the option. And Artez says, come on, Dan. They know what they're looking at. They know. And how looking ahead, how ironic was that, or just fortuitous, where Artez goes, like not bragging about his brother, go, come on, they won't be looking at him. So he's playing at Nebraska, and he split time with Mike Rozier, who won the Heisman the next year. Roger was supposed to be the star, got injured. Rozier had a great year. And I remember, I think they were playing Oklahoma the last game of the season before a bowl game, and Rozier got hurt, and Roger came back in like, oh, he was supposed to be the main guy, and had like a 253 touchdown game. And that put him back on the map again. Everybody knew about him. Niners draft him. He plays fullback the first year, more of a blocking fullback, and he catches a few passes out of the backfield. And I want to say it was Wendell Tyler. I can't remember the exact back he was the fullback. They moved him to fullback, or halfback later on, and Tom Rathman from Nebraska came in. Yeah. But I think the first Super Bowl so that would have been 82, 83. And then was the year before the Bears won, so it would have been 84 season, 85 Super Bowl. We're in the dorms, 3rd floor. So I think, Roger was a senior when we were freshmen, maybe 5th year seniors. So we're juniors. So it'd be Roger's second year in the league. Yeah. And he catches 3 touchdowns, or scores 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, including the high-stepping one you see. And like Mike Major, the Majors were a big family from Davenport Central. Leroy Williams, and him and his brother Steve were good players. All the Central guys are going bananas. And we're just laughing and loving it. Because like I said, I remember Roger Craig and Michael Nunn running around Lee Loman at the top in the winter. Wow. And just like they were regular guys. And Roger was married to Michael's sister or stepsister or half-sister, and helped him get involved with the Goosens, the boxing promoters out in California. Okay. and that's where his career took off. So it's kind of neat. And I always tell people this. It wasn't, not that it wasn't neat. You can relate to this. It wasn't neat interviewing the Michael Jordans and Walter Paytons and the biggest names we ever interviewed. It was neat knowing Roger Craig before he was Roger Craig. Yeah. I tell people here, Terry Gannon, who's doing the Olympics right now, went to high school with me. I blew a no-hitter of his in Pony League. I dropped a ball at third base. It was cooler knowing him at basketball camps than when he played at NC State, like people who know him here. He was on the NC State team. I'm like, yeah, I know him as the Little League All-Star player. It's always cool knowing the people when they move up. And John Marks, as you mentioned, he and I always talk about that. There's that fine line, like you're an Alleman guy. It's cool. I love Dan Gable. I almost idolize him. I love the fact that I got to know him and interview him. But it was cooler knowing Mark Johnson, from all of it. But, being the assistant wrestler at Michigan, a job in Illinois. For you, it might be Brett Bielema.
Yeah.
Do you remember, being from Erie, Prophetstown? I remember seeing Bielema when he was the assistant at K-State before he got to Wisconsin. Yeah.
Sure.
And so it was, it's kind of neat knowing them on their way up. And like you had Julian on the other day and stuff. So it's always, get as they move up. So the thing with Roger, and then when he was the Roger Craig Sports Bar, when it was a Lady Luck, which boat had him? I think it was
right?
The one, which, and I forget the names. President was Davenport. Lady Luck was at the time, I think it was Lady Luck. And Michael Isaac, who was a great guy and a friend of my lovely wife, Kelly, who I have to thank for setting this up. And Mike got me connected with, they used to do Monday Night Football parties. And Sunday, I would interview the celebrities on Sunday, and then they'd have people on Monday. And this was great for my nephews who are 35, 33 now. I would get the autographs of all the celebrities: Kenny Stabler, Charlie Waters, Danny White. I'm trying to think some of the people I interviewed. I remember Stabler, one of the nicest guys. Freddie, the punter, Ray Guy.
Yeah.
And Roger, because there's a connections, Ronnie Lott was in there. And first thing I said, show me your finger. I had the finger cut off. But it was cool. And Roger always appreciated that. I remember golfing in the Roger Craig celebrity, thing. And Roger was just a regular guy. Hey, Dan. And the best thing about interviewing him was that, me, I'm being a smart aleck too. I'd say, let's talk about the great players you played with. Let's talk about Montana and Rice and Bernie Pomeroy. And Roger would just start laughing at the guy who played at Central with them. He'd go, man, you crazy. And it's like talking to Artie Artez. So it was good. And I was supposed to run with him. He ran the Chicago Marathon. And that was 21 years ago when I blew out my knee. And I was training for that. It was my second marathon. Kelly and I went up. And Kelly ran it. I didn't get to run it with Roger. And I remember saying James Sahara should have filled in for me. But we were doing a promotion. But unfortunately, my fat butt blew out my knee. It trained. I was messing around. But that's how I got. We did a lot of stuff, like the charity stuff, like how you got to know Chuck Long. Yeah. I did, and then you did. Just as a regular guy doing stuff. And Roger never thought he was too big for Davenport. He would come back and do stuff, including with all the charity stuff we're talking about in the fundraisers. And he would laugh, I'm going to throw out names like John Posey, Robin Ewing. Of course, Jamie Williams played with him. He would come back, and I'd see him with those guys just hanging out, and we'd talk, working out. And, he didn't forget where he came from. And Jim Fox, I remember when I did a story, he coached him at Central, and he coached at Ambrose for 2 years, took over our defense, was the athletic director. Fox had some great stories, and he would always say, forget though, Danny, his brother was pretty good too. He would always point up Curtis Craig. And I asked Artez one time, how come, because some people would tell you Curtis was better in high school.
Johnny did on Monday.
And they were both great
Johnny
wrestlers.
Said on Monday that Curtis was better.
And not in a bad way. Like, not that Artez, not that Roger didn't get better later on. And one time I said, hey, Artie, sitting around like after playing pickups at Ambrose, just sitting like you and I right now. I said, Artie, how come Roger made it and Curtis didn't? If you know Artez, he goes, Roger's 6'2", Curtis 5'9", Dan. And that was it. And I go, that's it? Yeah, that's about it.
Wow.
And and what's his name played the wingback position. Nebraska used to run that option. And I can't remember if it was Wishbone. It was variations. In Oklahoma, everybody ran it. And Curtis had a pretty good career as like their wingback. Passes them flat when they did pass and coming in motion. But Roger was more of a pure eye back, a little bit bigger, and high knees, great track guy, great wrestler. Here's a funny story. So Pete Bush, right? National wrestling champ in Iowa, between the Bannocks from Assumption, undefeated, state champ in Assumption. And I said, Pete, who was the last kid to beat in high school? And he puts his head down because you're gonna laugh, Danny. Roger Craig.
No way.
They were like, I think Pete might have been a year younger, but so Pete's like a freshman and Roger's a sophomore. Pete's a sophomore, Roger's a junior, and Roger beat him. So that's how good at athletes and wrestlers and stuff. Curtis was supposed to be a great wrestler too.
Dan, why did it take so long? Why did it take so long for them to eventually put him in the? And Johnny talked about he didn't campaign for himself, those kind of things. Your thoughts?
Right.
It took him 33 years to put Roger Craig in the Hall of Fame or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's crazy. Is it that long?
Yeah.
Because a couple things. They don't want to put too many guys from one team sometimes. Why is L.C. Greenwood not in? When Mean Joe Green was unbelievable. L.C. Greenwood was not Mean Joe Green. Roger Craig wasn't Montana and Rice, who came later, but he was the best running back on that dynasty. And Steve Young went in. Steve Young was lucky he went to the Niners. USFL guy, wasn't good in Tampa. What has Steve Young done after football?
But be an announcer, be on air, be TV.
Always being in the media.
Limelight. Yeah,
not even liked by most of them respected his talent. Most of them not liked him because he's a weird guy.
Yeah.
Troy Aikman going on the first ballot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he win a game his rookie year?
No, not
the
at all.
team went 1-15.
Yeah.
0-14. Then Emmett showed up. But the quarterbacks, what's Troy Aikman done?
TV.
Since he retired.
TV. Limelight.
Oh.
Yeah.
Roger told me, he would never say this, but I don't care now. I'm not media acting. And it's who cares? When Roger was doing the boat stuff and I was seeing him a couple times a year, sitting down like you and I said, Roger, what? And he said, there's a bias. And this is a great story for Bears fans in your area. And so I said, Howie Long, overrated. Roger said like that. I said, was he better than Dan Hampton? Howie went in before Hampton. And I know this because Hampton played tackle and end. Hell no. And Roger would never talk like this with the microphone in front of him, but we're sitting around,
Yeah.
Hell no. When we played, and remember Bubba Paris, his daughters played at Oklahoma, were good basketball players. He said, he goes, shit. When we played the Raiders, Bubba said, I got him. We don't need to double team him. So like the guys in the no.
Yeah.
And the guys in the no were always backing Roger. Ronnie Lott was always in his corner, obviously. Because he was the first thousand guy. I heard some idiot on the radio around here go, well, he was one of the first thousand guys. I'm like, no, he wasn't.
Yeah.
He was the first thousand guy. He wasn't one of them. It was like, there were 3 or 4 in 2 years. No, it was a while. Then it was Marshall Faulk, and then it was a McCaffrey. There's only been like 3 or 4, right?
Yeah. No, that's it. I think Marshall
the 3.
Faulk and Christian McCaffrey and him.
McCaffrey. A little bit of a gap there, don't you think? But he was one of them. Oh, so he was. The guy says, so he was one of them. Plus, I still think he should have won the Super Bowl MVP. He scored 3 touchdowns, but once again, nothing against Montana. I mean, he was pretty good. But they give it to the Notre Dame quarterback. Yeah. In that Super Bowl, I think Roger, should have been the MVP. He scored 3 touchdowns. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's happened. So going back to Joe Namath, the running back will get screwed for the quarterback, the defensive guy. Joe Namath won Super Bowl 3. Did you ever look at his stats?
Wasn't that good?
Pedestrian.
Yeah.
Matt Snell, I want to say, had 141 yards rushing. Probably should have given it to the running.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dan, you look at what I always talk about is you look at I think Quad City athletes, you mentioned Davenport Central, but like he was a Quad Cities guy. Everybody here in the Quad Cities loved him. And I always go back, and there's so many nowadays, but I'm probably wrong. There's probably people before him, but I feel like he was that guy. Growing up, I knew Roger Craig was from the Quad Cities. I knew Davenport Central eventually. He embraced the whole area, and he talked about how kind he was, Iowa nice, all that kind of stuff. Am I way off that he was that? I mean, he would say yes to anything. He was back here doing casinos, all that kind of stuff as well. Am I kind of close on that?
Yeah. He like I said, he never forgot where he came from. And a lot of it had to do with a good family and his family still being in town.
Yeah.
And I remember Curtis coming back, and he was the strength coach, I want to say, or strength and conditioning at Nebraska. And I remember him come back, and Arteta's like, "Hey, Curtis is in town. Come on." And I met him out at one of the sports bars, the big ones. There was one in Milan and one in Davenport, and I can't remember halftime, I think.
Yeah.
And I met him up at halftime. We were just like little kids playing video games and talking, having beers. So they were good guys. And I go back, you hear the names I'm naming. Most of those guys, there were only a few Ricky Davises, and you know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Ricky Davis pretended like he never grew up in Davenport. And I remember Ryan Bowen and I talking about it one time, saying, they were at, I think they were the same NBA draft. Does that sound about right?
Probably.
Yeah.
And Bowen said, they're at a draft mini camp, for lack of a better term. And Bowen says, Ricky goes, they go, "Where are you from?" He goes, "Chicago." And Bowen goes, "No, you're not." And it wasn't Bowen from Fort Madison, I want to say.
Yeah. And Ricky would always say he was from Vegas. He would say Vegas, even when he was in the NBA.
So,
he was
went
Vegas.
north. So, but there was a more pride, and I hate to sound like an old Davenport guy going when they opened north, but there was a lot of pride at the West Central, because West would win state, Central would win state with a Craig, West would win state with like a Jering and a Rubley, Central would win state, West would win state. And this is when I first got there, and it was kind of funny, like Central, West, Central, West, Central. And Central won 3 state titles in like a 7-year, and West won 2 in about the 5 years, and they were going back and forth. And so I think there was a lot of pride in that whole area too. And plus back then, as Johnny reminds you, and you're an Alleman kid, Alleman and Moline were playing down, Assumption and West and Central, and maybe Bettendorf. And it sounds so funny now that Pleasant Valley and North Scott were the smaller schools, and then Burlington and Clinton would play. And
we just put Johnny. I'm surprised he didn't tell you he's a Hall of Famer again. His team, his 75 team, went in the Alabama Hall of Fame, and they were 10-0.
Cool.
They lost in the second round of the playoffs, but it was always like they wouldn't get in because they didn't go very far. And it's like, well, no, that was so different back then. And their regular season was they beat Central.
Classes.
Yeah, I mean they beat, and they played all the public. They were across the river, all those kind of things as well. So
there was a Flowers kid was the big star they used to talk about. I remember.
No, absolutely.
Well, and that's where I get funny with Johnny. I said, "Well, yeah, it was harder in Illinois." Knowing my high school was winning state titles at the same time, But there were only 4 classes back then, maybe 5. And what are there now? 10, 8?
Yeah.
For Illinois.
Yeah.
How many are there? I don't.
4
8 or 10. There were. I want to say, because this is weird, because going Jolly Catholic, my 7th grade, 8th grade, freshman year, they won like 4 in a row, 4A, and then by the time I was a senior, it was the first 5A title. And there might have been 5 classes at 6.
There's 8 now. 8A, all the way up to 8A, and all that.
Which is okay.
Yeah, I mean,
but it was harder.
But here's the problem, Dan. In Iowa, which the state's different. There's already 5A, 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A, 8-man. So there's 6 in Iowa, and there's only 8 in Illinois.
Well, it was and I always felt bad because Bettendorf, like for one, I felt bad for Assumption for years. Bettendorf would be an Assumption, and Assumption would be the second best team in the state a lot of times, and not. But Bettendorf would win state. Nothing against them, but they win 4A. And then you'd have a good Alleman or a good Rock Island or a good Moline team, and the UT even had, one of those schools, and they all kind of shared different times, and they would make it and win and like McGuire at Moline, they'd be in 7A or 8A and lose to one of the Chicago suburb teams.
Boblet was the same way.
I remember Rock Island losing to both Mount Carmel and Joliet Catholic, I think. And Rock Island Vic had some really good teams.
Remember Alonzo Wise? He went to Wisconsin.
That was his senior year.
Yep.
But his junior year, I think they were almost better, and they had, I think, a B, one of the B kids. Ernie B. Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alonzo, and there might have been a kid named Johnson, or just say VC or Brooks or something. It's kind of like Central. There was always that family of really good and they had like a you might remember 3,000-yard rushers, I think.
Yeah.
I don't before, and then Wise the next year had like 2,000, had like a Tavian Banks, Roger Craig type season.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I used to feel bad because in the Quad City area, I would be like, whoa. And nothing against the Tavian teams are unbelievable. Levant's teams were good with Greg, but it was always like, well, Bettendorf went undefeated and won state. Rock Island went 10-1 and lost to Mount Carmel. Like, that was pretty awesome. So it was, there was a little more animosity or jealousy at the time. And the thing is, Bettendorf was winning state and everything, and Assumption was winning 3A in a lot of sports except for football. They had to be 4A. So you'd have like Assumption win, and Pleasant Valley would win a few. So you always had the MAC champ winning states in wrestling and football. And, and it was kind of all of them in Moline girls with softball and basketball who had to kind of carry the torch for the, softball was pretty unbelievable in the Western Big Six back then.
No, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Dan, when Rocky won basketball, and then when Moline just recently won basketball, I told him, and the Iowa side was like, well, PV won and North Scott won, and I'm like, guys, it's all due respect. Yes, you won state championship. It's just a completely different beast. Yeah. To win a state championship in Illinois is crazy hard to do.
Right. And the difference between for every Rafe LaFrenz or, Bowen, for every few kids who come out of Iowa, the kids who went to Kansas most of the time.
Yeah.
Heinrich,
yep.
Heinrich, yeah. Forget the Isaiah Thomases and Doc Rivers who didn't win state, the Peoria teams and some of those other teams. But there's just a level where you go, you're watching an NBA game and you literally find yourself saying, oh, Dwayne White, I didn't realize he was from Illinois. He was up at Marquette. All those good Illinois teams, and you might be too young to remember, the Kendall Gills, Nick Anderson.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
All those guys there was just so much talent. Obviously, you're going to have Chicago, but Peoria. How about, you're an Iowa fan. Do you remember Michael Payne from Quincy playing at Iowa?
Yeah.
With Stokes, he was from Illinois. And then Bruce Douglas went to Illinois.
You'll get a kick out of this, Dan. In Galesburg, Joey Range is back helping coaching Galesburg. And I talked to him the other day, and he's like, they lost. I can't think who they lost to, but they lost by 4 in the state championship game, and they had a bunch of NBA guys on it. It wasn't Farragut.
It wasn't Whitney Young, was it?
It wasn't Kevin Garnett and those guys. It was somebody else.
No, that was more Pete Michael and Monte Jenkins.
Yeah, Joey's watching this yelling who it is because we just talked about it like a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I mean, that's the difference between it all. Dan Buriich joining us right now and Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. I got to talk to you about Jim Albracht. And I have a lot of influences in my life, yourself, Dan Pearson, all those kind of things. Never worked directly with Jim until like MediaCom. And then obviously I took over, not directly from him, but doing the pregame show for Iowa I get to do now.
Sure.
He was always so nice to me. I know you knew Jim, you love Jim, all those kind of things. Your thoughts on his legacy, and when you start talking about not just sports people, but media people in the Quad City. Because you know what I mean? Like Jim was a sports guy, but he was also, I listened to Albracht in the AM with my dad all the time, and he could do everything.
So kind of going to be weird. I'm not going to try to get too sappy or arrogant showing this. Albracht and I always had a kind of a mutual respect. And you had a little bit of one. You interned for me, right? Mm-hmm. I interned for Jim.
Wow.
Kind of, I interned for Jim, and Marty Kubrick was the weekend sports guy. I was at Ambrose, and I was trying, and I remember they'd come interview, and a lot of times I wasn't any good at Ambrose. I was good enough to start, right? But Bob Jervitz, not a good. Mark Walker, some of our other stars were not good interviews. Dave Pratty. So Furlong, a lot of times ago, and John Rollinger was another undercut. Hey, the Valentine, Danny, go do the interviews. Danny, go do the interviews. That's how Pete Ivanek got known too. So I remember talking to the late Fran Riley, was at Channel 4 at the time with Don Sharp, and Fran goes, "Why don't you come?" Remember how Fran talked? And he went in the news. Come to interview. But I couldn't, for some reason, I couldn't intern there. And I interned for Marty and Jim. And Jim used to let me go in. I worked Friday nights. I'd shoot high school football, play on Saturday. Sunday night, I would go in, and I didn't even have a car. I'd borrow like Dave Pratty's car or somebody I went to school with. And Jim would let me edit. The first day he goes, "Hey, do you know how to edit?" I said, I think I do. And they had the exact same machine we had in Ambrose. I was like, oh, light bulb. He let me, part of the way was Jim being lazy, but I look back. He let me edit his whole Sunday sportscast. I was an intern in college.
Yeah.
And he'd go, "Hey, And and you know how Jim was. He kind of had a cool thing about, here, 7 seconds, put a cut in here of Bobby Knight. Indiana's playing Illinois on Sunday or something. All right, I want a good shot of Delray Brooks or Ricky Callaway, whoever the stars were, Jay Edwards. And then, all right, then Illinois comes back, and I want you to put in Bruce Douglas or whoever. I'm forgetting the players' names that time. And at 30 seconds, run a long shot because it used to be different. Put a long play in so it doesn't go to black because you were fading it.
Yeah.
And I remember this like it was yesterday, which is sad because it was 85 or whatever. And then I got hired at 8, like you, on the floor crew, because all of a sudden they're going to hire 3 or 4 new people in the production department, and you already know people there. And then I start working at Channel 8 over Christmas. Everybody wants off. Nobody's around. I worked like 30 some straight days. And I got called in by Doug McWhorter. Somebody's like, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? And I remember looking at him and I said, well, you don't yell at the people who work. You yell at the people who don't work. So I got in trouble right out the bat. And then they hired Robin Davis, who's down in Kansas City, who was back for Albrecht Singh, turned out to be a great photographer, Terry Brooks. And what they did, it was me, Terry Brooks, Robin Davis, and a couple of girls. They made, and Randy McKay is going to watch this, they didn't realize they had the best. They upped their charity basketball team, their softball team.
Yes. Hey, Dan,
all of a sudden,
you got like
they had the most athletic team ever.
He was Robin Davis was back. You just mentioned. So Andy, my son Charlie calls it the old guy league, but on Sundays we play basketball at Ambrose. Yeah. Still, Hoops McKay is just a machine at 60 whatever years old, and I get there.
61, I think he's my age.
Yeah, and I get there and I'm like, I was BSing with people and I got in for the second game, and I'm like, who is this guy? And I'm like, and then another younger guy is like, hey, I bet you this an older black guy, I bet you he was pretty good back in the day. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Hell yes, he was good. That's Robin Davis. He could still.
He played at UT.
We played on Sunday. He was amazing.
And he played at University of Dubuque. So great story there too. I knew of Robin when I'm at Ambrose because the university, they had an Iowa senior college thing. And you remember a kid named Steve Carfino who played in Iowa?
Yeah.
All right. Robin lit him up, and Carfino was real cocky. Everybody's like, who's the kid from University of Dubuque? Robin lit him up for like 37 in some all-star game when they were seniors. Cool story.
Yeah, he lit me up last weekend. He lit me up last weekend. So it was great to see him back in town and doing all those kind of things.
He's almost better as he got older, too, because he got stronger. When I met him, he was kind of lean, you know? And then he started lifting weights, so he's almost better now because he's so strong.
He's in better shape than everybody there. You mentioned getting in trouble for working so much. Dan, remember when like Bruce Appa used to call me in, Matt, like you can't. We're gonna have to give you insurance. That was the big thing. We can't get. You're only a part timer. You can't. I'm like, I get it, and I'd say the same thing. I go to my pops and I go, Dad, like they should be yelling at the guys that don't want to work. I'm sorry that I want to work. So absolutely.
That's how we were raised. Okay. So there's a tie-in with Albrecht interning for me, you interning for, or excuse me interning for Albrecht, you interning for me. The other thing that Jim and I always got along is like, I don't think Jim ever thought he was just a sports guy or he just thought he was a TV guy or a radio guy. He was a great play-by-play guy, and you worked with him before. He'd have charts and he was well prepared. He played off like, and he didn't care. So, we'd do games where he'd go on cable. You want to do the play-by-play or you want to do the color? And I'd go, you're doing the play-by-play. Shut up. You're better at it. No, you can do it. So he never had the big ego.
Did the same thing to me. Did the same thing to me. I'm like, Jim, I'm not doing the play-by-play. Are you kidding me? You're the man. Yeah. Go ahead.
He was better. Yeah. He was just better. Yeah. Not that you're bad, not that I was bad, but he was just better. So we were smart enough to realize that. But same thing when he was doing radio. He'd do AM and he just it was like Matt or Dazzo. I'd walk in, Dan the man, and he had good pipes, And he never looked, even when I was 18, or not 18, I was 21 when I interned for him. He never talked to me like I was a 21-year-old kid. And I'm Albrecht, and I've been around forever. He treated you as an equal, and he used to play basketball with Andy and I and Robin and stuff, and played a little softball with them. So, went out and had some beers at the old ground round. That was our big thing. And we had a girl, Mary Bowenton, who's a photographer up in Chicago from Lockport, my neck of the woods, Joliet. So she used to play with us, and Terry Brooks will verify this story too, if you still see Terry around. First time Robin wasn't working there yet. It was Terry, me, and Mary. And ironically, Channel 8's playing 97X. And it's in Ronald Reagan Gymnasium, Tampico, I think. And all they get Matt Hamill and Alan Savell, and they're all like, oh, 97X is going to kill us. They always kill us. And we go out, and Mary cuts the middle. She played at Marycrest. Like, no look at to her. She does a jump hook. Mary has like 8. I have about 13 just from hustling because I was in good shape like that. Terry has like 28. And Marty Kubrick, I think, scored a free throw at the end to win it. We scored all the points because Mary's coming off Marycrest. I'm coming out of Ambrose, and Terry's coming off Illinois. And Terry's taking rebounds off the rim and going coast to coast. Jeez. Then Robin joins us. We go down to the Galesburg Railroad days, and we're the championship game. And Robin and Terry are, man, they're like mad because we missed a shot here. They threw a ball away. And I'm laughing at the timeout. And Robin goes, come on, man. I'm competitive. I go, Robin, it's 19-0. We were shutting the team out. We were shutting them out. I go, we're up 19-0. He laughs. He goes, you're right. I'm like, we want to be up 40-0. But it was just such a good group and a good time to be at Channel 8 at the time. Yeah. And Jim had a lot to do with it because you huddled and you read all the, not obituaries, but the tributes. Yeah. You huddled around the sports desk. Recruit. I guess we kind of continue that tradition too. You came because it wasn't as serious. Jim was back there joking around and letting you go shoot, letting you go edit. And and that's when he worked radio, was the same way. Like fun. If you were good at what you did, he let you be good at what you did. So he was just a good guy. And you saw that why everybody came back. Mary came back from Kansas City. I looked at the picture, and there was Brent Bartles and Marty Kubrick and Brad Mosier and another Ambrose guy. And, obviously Andy was in the circle. Doug McWhorter, I mentioned, was out of the department. Dave Peterson. I can't even remember. Minor was in the middle.
Yeah, of course.
Chris was in the middle of the picture, but she was great too. I'm drawing blanks on Bruce Apple would know that group. And I'm looking at the picture right now that I saw. And it was just a good group of people who all good at what they did. Like Minor's a great example too. Like Jim, kind of had that same attitude. They were damn good at what they did, but didn't think they were, they were confident. Don't get us wrong, just like you and I are confident. But they didn't think like, oh, I'm better than anybody. Even though Jim was better at play-by-play and Chris was a better reporter. They were just like, it was a good group.
When did you leave Channel 8? Do you remember the year?
From when you were there?
No, yeah, when you were done, when you left. Was it 05?
Okay, so I worked there college. Yeah, I'm trying. 05, I think it was. Okay. Because I worked there in college. I interned at college, worked there for like 2 years. And I remember I was up in Rockford for a year. I worked for Pearson and Cornelius just as a photographer, and I was selling for 97X. And then I came back, and I had met Guy Perry and all those guys, and they hired me when I came back from Rockford, which didn't work out. I was there a year. And they hired me to do sports for Dwyer Michaels, who were replacing Ian Case and the coach, and not doing well at the time. So I still give Bill and Greg crap about this. I'm like, I saved you. I saved you. But it was more of my friend. It was more Guy going, we need a sports guy and stuff. And ended up being great friends with Bill and Greg. Obviously, Greg and I were in each other's weddings. But they got at the same attitude. But I came back. I remember it was Jim Mertens used to laugh that each time I contract, there was a guy from Indiana, Jim Turpin, was a sports fan. He used to listen to me on K-Jock. And he's like, hey, I want you to help us out our Friday football because Pearson was killing him. The highlight zone was killing. Yeah. So Rich Hankels was still there for a couple weeks. And for Jim Fuchek, the weekend guy. So I came in, and it was cool. There was a girl named Annette Tihanovich, who was a reporter, Tihanovich. And I did my first, hey, just do it, kind of like I did with you, go do one game, right? Mm. And they just gave me one game to do, and they forgot that I had, done it before. I guess they thought it was a dumb radio guy. So I went out, shot like Bettendorf or something, should say, and just edited it. And by then I knew every coach. So as I'm doing the highlights, I'm like, there's old Merv on the sidelines and Randy Scott next to him, and there's Frecking, the strength coach, and there's Steve. I'm naming the coaches on the sideline, let alone the players. Yeah. And I do it. I remember I get done, and Tianovich goes, that was really good. And I go, thanks, Annette. That was kind of cool. She goes, And I remember Ray Huntley predicted, he goes, yeah, Hankles won't be here. Like Rich was already out the door. And then they hired other people. And just like you, okay, I'll fill in weekends. Okay, well, all right, can you fill in? Yeah. All right, now we're going to hire somebody else. Okay. And I would just say it like that. I do radio and TV. It doesn't matter. And then I eventually just worked my way up. So I think that was like 97. So I was there probably from 97 to 05.
Well, it's funny because you brought up when you went in and Jim's like, hey, you want to do this? And you ran with it. I'll tell everybody, first time I came in as an intern at WQAD, you're like, hey, here, and you literally threw me the keys. I think it's probably because it went to Ambrose. So you're like, well, Duke's probably taught him something.
No, not probably, Matt. It was because I trusted Donald Duke Snyder.
Yeah, exactly.
If he went to Ambrose,
and he's like, you're like, here's the keys, here's your gear, go shoot. And I shot Ambrose, Augie, baseball. And I remember going like, oh my God. I was driving in the car calling my old man going, Dad, I'm driving in the car. Like I'm in the car. Like this is so cool. So, and you know what? I think it went okay. I think it did. But the reason why I asked you about when you left, because I think it was right after you left. And I spoke a little bit at Jim's thing. And this is one of my first kind of memories of Jim. Besides, I said, it's funny. Everybody talked about how they met Jim. Well, the reason I met Jim is because I watched TV. I watched every sportscast over and over. And so that's how I knew him. And I went to spring training. I really wasn't working for WQAD, but I got credentials and I was kind of doing a few things, but I really wasn't. And I had college buddies out there. And Jim called me and he's like, hey, can you want to come on Albracht in the AM and talk about like the spring training every morning? Yeah. I'm like, I was so excited. First couple mornings, did a great job. And like, I don't know if I did a great job, but I did it. And
did a good job. I'm sure you did a good job.
And then, the last night I was probably overserved. It wasn't because of me. I was overserved, and I overslept. I passed out too long, whichever way you want to look at it. And I missed it, flat out missed it. And I called him later, and I'm like, and this isn't. I joked at the thing that like I come from the Dan Buriich, tough love. Like if you mess up, you're gonna be told. And I don't mean that but you did give tough love when you need to. That people need that.
I still do.
Yeah, exactly.
The people I work, I got 2 young people working for me, and the guy's just out of the service, and he goes, "I love it," because I'm like, "You screwed that up."
Dan, I had a GM at WQAD. It's probably still there. That we had a big meeting because this was years ago. Newsroom was morale was down and people being mean, and he's like, "We don't yell at people." Like we just don't. My dad yelled at me, and I'm not going to let anybody yell at people. And then he went around like asking like who are the most influential people, and like he got to me, and I'm like Dan Buriich, and he's like, why was he most influential? I'm like, because he yelled at me, and that's what you're supposed to do. Like, and then you know what? When you did something right and he didn't yell at you, it meant more because you weren't getting yelled at. So, anyways, but I called Jim, and I said to Jim, I said, hey, like I'm so sorry about. I was expecting like the worst, and he's just like. It's groovy, dude. You're good. It's live radio. And it's like, and I just was like, oh my God. And like that, the more you got into it, and you know this, obviously, the more you get into it, the less you took yourself seriously. It's live television. If something messes up, it messes up. And Jim, yourself, obviously a big person that told me that too, but like that was Jim. I never saw him in a bad mood. I never saw him cranky.
Right.
I could get cranky. I could be an ass. Like you could get cranky. Like, but like Jim, I'm sure he probably did. But Jim was just cool, man. Like we're good. Let's move on.
He was cool. Comparing people like Dan Pearson was an even keel guy. Cornell is a good guy, but Tom was more, kind of kept him close to the vest. One-on-one, he was good, but in crowds, he. Not a bad thing. I'm not saying that bad about because Tom had a great talent and good play-by-play, could do radio and TV too. Jim was more like go with the flow. Don Sharp was even keel. I'm just naming some of those guys. Yeah. I was probably a little bit more intense, but laugh. Don't take myself serious. But going back to wrestling.
Kinda.
Yeah, I got. Yeah, kinda. And Jose and Andy are watching this right loud. Like, I know I got it a little intense sometimes, but it was always like for a right reason. And I still say, Dwyer used to say this from Dwyer Michaels. He's like, you're not the bully. You're the one who wants to punch the bully. Like I was the one in meetings arguing. Two good Albracht things too. So he needed off and Marty Kubrick needed off on a Sunday. And he goes, oh, Dan will anchor. He's been editing my sportscast. I've never even been on air there. John Ritchie's was the news director at the time. He's like, oh, he can't be on air. And he had his wife come in, and I put the whole show together. His wife used to do some stuff. And nothing against John or Julie, his wife. But I'm like, and Jim was in my corner then, and Jim Ritchie said something like, well, he's got a kind of a Chicago accent. And Jim goes, maybe he wants to work in Chicago, which was hysterical for him to just say that. That's how he took it. Another time, and Dwyer and Michaels were telling me this, Jim had an interview on OC, and he's like, yeah, they'll do a better job. So he walks down the hallway to Q106 at the time and says, hey, why don't you guys take this? And it was like Tanya Harding or some big, it wasn't because he had Tanya Harding, but somebody like that. It was a big national interview. And he goes, no, you guys will do a better job. That's where he was cool.
Yeah.
Like he could, he was comfortable. He would do a great job. But he's like, you know what? That's more up your alley. And that's, I've mentioned Guy Perry's name. He's kind of like that. He was always like, oh, you'll do better than this. You'll do better than that. And those are the cool guys you worked with who were very good at what they did, have to be the star. Anybody. And I always thought that was cool. And that's where Jim was cool too.
He was the best. Dan, I said I would keep you for 20 minutes. 45 minutes later, I'm going to let you get out of here.
We've had two topics.
I know. We'll talk Bears next time, and we will do this. We won't do this weekly, but we got to catch up much quicker between
Detroit.
the two.
I see this Detroit helmet.
I got a Illini helmet up here. Did you see this?
Which is cool, but I don't see a Bears helmet.
No, I don't. Dan, I can't.
How many last second wins do we need?
I can't. Here's what I say. That national nightmare that was the Chicago Bears, I'm glad it's over. And that's just because I hate the Bears. It's nothing. The coach was great. Ben Johnson, I think would do great. I get crap around here. I'm not sold on Caleb yet. I don't know if that makes you mad or am I an idiot or what, but I'm not quite sold on Caleb.
Crying in the stands. I didn't like him his rookie year, but no, he's like, all right, it's kind of like when Elway was coming up. Ask Cleveland fans. He'd roll one way and throw the other way. And this is why I say there's only 4 or 5 quarterbacks who can make a certain throw, and there's only 1 or 2 who will try to make that throw.
Yeah.
Favre, when he had Holmgren, was that way before he got stupid at the end. He would make throws that only a handful, maybe 5 to 10 guys, maybe 6 or 8 guys can make the throw, and only a few of them will try it. Like Darnold, could probably make the throw and won't try it. Stafford, maybe.
Yeah. No.
Like Holmes will.
Yeah.
And that's where I think Caleb's in that group. Like, because don't ask Packer fans. Like, as a Bears fan, I would say that about Favre. And Packer fans can say that now, like Caleb's making throws Jordan Love wouldn't even try to make.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he could make them.
Well, I will say that some of those throws were done 4th down, so he had to throw it or he would have lost it. But I agree with the fact that
guys still don't make it. Guys still drop short.
And his intangibles I'm not saying he's not going to be great. I just think he's got to get better with the first through third quarter and the completion percentage.
So does Josh Allen.
Yes. And I'm not saying
Josh Allen.
You're right. But when I say those kind of things, they act like I'm saying he's the worst quarterback in the world. I'm like, I'm not saying that. I'm just, here's the thing about Ben is I knew Ben would come and I say Johnny gives me shit because I say Ben Johnson because I don't know him personally. Right. But when he they were going to improve the running game, and that's everyone thought he's going to get there and throw the ball all over the place. And being a Detroit fan, I knew. And you're going to think I'm crazy. So
he had Swift in Detroit too.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to say. So he had Swift and Jamal Williams in Detroit, and they had really good seasons. And he scrapped
then it became Montgomery.
He scrapped it, and so I think they're going to do the same thing. I'm not saying that I like the Manungai or the Manungai, the guy, the 7th rounder,
overachieving rookie.
Yeah, I think he's good. But if Ben can upgrade the running back position, poor DeAndre Swift, because it'll be the second time it'll be him. But I think he's crazy enough he wants more than what he had this year.
Swift, I've defended Swift with my family, my nephews and stuff. Swift was good in Philly, good in Detroit. He's that guy. He's not, this level, but he's better than most of the running backs in the league.
No, I agree.
And he can catch the ball. He can find seams, runs harder than he ever gets credit for. Well, it's kind of like Montgomery too. When the Bears, my son loved Montgomery with the Bears and always picks him in fantasy with Detroit. It's not that he fumbled, people fumble. It's not that he fumbled, people fumble. Randy Cross is on TV